Hey, gang, this week's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. Hey, LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free now at linkedin.com/goodseats. That's linkedin.com/goodseats to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And now, here's our show.
In the forefront of the world soccer scene, the National Professional Soccer League is in its 10th sensational season, attracting tens of thousands of sports fans every year, and it continues to be the fastest-growing all-pro sports league in the nation. But it's not just sports fanatics that are getting hooked on the thrill of the game. More and more young people are turning to the NPSL for fun and for inspiration. In addition, many American schools have begun to switch their focus from other sports to soccer, and the NPSL has given its full support to help the young players of today become the superstars of tomorrow. The NPSL is responsible for innovative rule changes that translate into faster action, hotter plays, and more excitement than ever. The game is played on a 200-foot-long field in 4 15-minute quarters. Plus, the NPSL's 1, 2, and 3-point scoring system gives indoor soccer the speed of hockey, the power of football, and the non-stop action of basketball. Unlike ordinary soccer, the ball can bounce off the dasherboards and come back into play, which leaves less time for lollygagging, dilly-dallying, and just hanging around. Each team is allowed 6 players on the field at a time, smaller than the ordinary soccer team, so the action is twice as fast. There are more one-on-one challenges than in ordinary soccer. These critical plays are known as shootouts for obvious reasons. They can be moments of glory, or they can be times of defeat, but they're always intense. When such top players as Hector Marinaro and Jamie Swanner go head-to-head, the field can become a battleground, and the players can turn into gladiators. With competition like this, you know there ain't no fooling around.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. My name, as announced, is Tim Hanlon. How you doing? And the podcast, as announced, is Good Seats Still Available. Yes, it is. And we welcome you to this week's proceedings. Thanks for finding us. We appreciate it. And fun times to be had by all this week as we go back to the fun and ever-evolving sport of indoor soccer with our guest this week, Keith Tozer, who is arguably the chief guy that one can go to talk about the current day version of the game, the origination of the game. Somebody who was there in the earliest days of the major indoor soccer league coming out of college and has been, I guess, frankly, one of the deepest and most knowledgeable lifers, if you will, of this indoor game, a relatively new concoction. And we've talked about the origins of it with people like Steve Holroyd and Ed Tepper and a few others. The first league, however, in earnest, aside from professional tournaments that the North American Soccer League did in the early part of the 1970s, the real first league of any substance was that of the Major Indoor Soccer League, started in 1978. And who was there playing in the very first games of such for a one-year wonder known as the Cincinnati Kids? Yes, Keith Tozer was part of that team coming out of having just graduated from Oneonta State in New York. A draft pick, we find out in our conversation coming up, of the Washington Diplomats of the North American Soccer League Outdoor. However, timely for Keith coming out of college when he was, got a bid, got drafted by this team called the Cincinnati Kids in the MISL. What's that? He said at the time. And we get into why and what he felt that was going to be and perhaps why it was a good move for him. And it wound up becoming an illustrious career of indoor play with not only the Kids, but the Hartford Hellions. Remember them? The Pittsburgh Spirit in the early 1980s. Remember them? How about the Louisville Thunder of the AISA, American Indoor Soccer Association, and then later the National Professional Soccer League, the second version or incarnation of such. the Atlanta Attack, which then moved to Kansas City, where he not only played but was also coach. Same for Louisville, by the way. He was a player coach. The Los Angeles Lazers, something we've talked about with our pals Ronnie Weinstein and Johnny Buss and others. The Los Angeles Lazers, yes, the Jerry Buss and family owned and forum domiciled team in the MISL. Keith was the coach of that team for, I think, the last 2 years of its life. And a whole bunch of other stuff, futsal and et cetera. But I think most of you general sports fans out there who have some understanding or awareness of indoor soccer in more modern times, shall we say, will know Keith in two fashions. Number one, as the longtime coach, circa 1992 and onward until about 2014, of the still existing Milwaukee Wave, a franchise that is emblematic of the crazy patchwork quilt of indoor soccer leagues and teams. Began its life in 1984 in the AISA and meandered its way through its conversion to the second incarnation of the NPSL. Then the second incarnation of the MISL, when the NPSL sort of converted and or transformed into that in 2001. A brief one-year stop in this thing called the XSL, the Extreme Soccer League, only 4 teams. New Jersey Ironmen, I know, was another one of those. We'll get into that in some other episode. The third incarnation of the MISL, circa 2009. And now the team that still exists, the Milwaukee Wave does, in something that is Keith's second journey into the indoor soccer extravaganza called the Major Arena Soccer League, that Keith is now the commissioner of. And thanks to our pal JP Della Camera, who is the chief cook and bottle washer from all things PR and communications and television and media and stuff for the Major Arena Soccer League, we get introduced for the first time to our pal now, our new pal, Keith Tozer, the commissioner of the Major Arena Soccer League. And we've glanced around this idea and this topic for a couple of different episodes, but is striving, the MASL is, to perhaps get to that sort of high level that the original MISL enjoyed back in its early days when it was bursting onto the scene as this brand new phenomenon in pro sports. And Lord knows there's a lot of talent out there. And there's a room certainly for the indoor game with the dasher boards and the plexiglass and the hockey-like 2-minute penalties and all that stuff. It's an exciting game. I think the burgeoning outdoor game has really sort of taken root here in the United States after many, many, many years. But is there a role for the indoor game in the winters? I think Keith would argue vociferously, yes, as he would for, say, the game of futsal, which does not have the boards and the plexiglass. And yes, we do get into whatever happened to, or what has happened to, or what is the status of, I guess I should say, of the professional futsal league. It's still kind of alive. That's the Mark Cuban invested thing back in 2016. Keith was named and part of that for some time. Keith has been involved in futsal on the national team level for some time. We get into that for sure. We also even take a quick detour into Keith's very brief outdoor career. It was only one season, 1979. The American Soccer League Pennsylvania Stoners, one of the better named teams in all of pro sports, the Pennsylvania Stoners. So we talk about all of that stuff and more with our guest this week, Keith Tozer, the commissioner of the Major Arena Soccer League, and let's call him, in all the loving way we can, a lifer, an indoor soccer lifer for sure. Great conversation coming up for you in mere moments time. How about 2 quick sponsors for you to celebrate the wonderful and intriguing and ever-changing sport of professional indoor soccer? Well, we got two places for you to celebrate that with us, and perhaps enjoy some T-shirts and some other garb from two of our great sponsors. One, of course, is oldschoolshirts.com. PF Wilson, how you doing? PF, nice to talk to you again via the interwebs. If you go to, and lots of great stuff at Old School Shirts, you know this, if you've been a long-time listener. If you haven't, get yourself over to oldschoolshirts.com. All kinds of great shirts, and like the name implies, it's not just actually sports. And there's great forgotten leagues and teams, including indoor soccer, like the Major Indoor Soccer League, probably the best assemblage and well-crafted versions of wonderful shirts commemorating just about every team that ever graced the green carpet of the original Major Indoor Soccer League, including some of the places that Keith played, such as the Cincinnati Kids, a great shirt there with the original logo and the sort of half volley kicking player. Probably, I have not seen a more gorgeous shirt celebrating the Cincinnati Kids than at oldschoolshirts.com. There's an LA Lazers shirt in there, of course. He being the coach of that team for a couple of years. That is there for you as well. There's a Pittsburgh Spirit shirt. You could celebrate Keith's couple of years there, too. And other great teams of that great league. The Hartford Hellions, a great red shirt with the Hartford Hellions logo. God, people forget that the Hellions even existed. But yeah, they sure did. Oldschoolshirts.com, promo code for you there. Good seats for 10% off all of your purchases, not only for MISL shirts, but all kinds of other leagues and great pop culture stuff there for you. Check them out. Oldschoolshirts.com, promo code good seats. And also check out extratimevintage.com. Again, our pal Kevin Schultz in Florence, Kentucky. Extra Time Vintage, all one word, .com. Promo code for you there is good seats for 10% off all of your purchases. And there you're going to find some really esoteric things, such as, wait for it, shirts and a mug even, or a hoodie or whatever other design you want, of the Pennsylvania Stoners. Yeah, that great Pennsylvania Stoners logo. You can really show your soccer knowledge by getting an offering there from extratimevintage.com. How about the Hershey Impact? You remember them? Well, sure. They played in the NPSL and the old AISA. The Canton Invaders did too. And a whole bunch of other shirts from various teams in all kinds of soccer leagues, and some of them really esoteric and hard to find. extratimevintage.com. Again, promo code good seats for 10% off all of your purchases there. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, great listeners, for not only checking them out, but supporting the show with every purchase at both of those places. There you go. All right, so let's move right along, shall we? Let's get into indoor soccer. Let's immerse ourselves into the past and the present and the very, we think, bright future in the Major Arena Soccer League that exists today. Now, let's talk to the commissioner, Keith Tozer, and how he got there and the long and winding road, shall we say, of indoor soccer. Here's our conversation we had just last week. Thank you for listening. Please, as always, enjoy. I don't know if I could personify indoor soccer on the pro level. I guess I'm talking to the guy who kind of has been there at the creation and then some. So I guess maybe it's helpful for our audience, especially those who are not sort of familiar maybe with the world of professional indoor soccer, or Lord knows we've had plenty of great conversations that should hopefully have schooled them thus far. But maybe describe what your current role is with the MASL, and maybe we can work our way back from there, because I think it's a good table set to know what this Major Arena Soccer League is, and it certainly gives us an open window into truly what used to be and maybe what might be at a truly high level once again.
Yeah, well, my title is commissioner, but what I found when I was coaching and playing and a vice president of so many teams, that in this sport you do so many other things, and that's what I found that we're doing now. It was kind of like a unique situation where Shep and JP and I have been friends for years, all the way back to the early days. And when the MASL was looking for a commissioner, actually I want to say Shep came up with the idea, said, wouldn't it be unique that we all three went after the same job and then split it up. And it was like, wow, a bell kind of clicked. And we knew from talking with Joshua, the commissioner prior, that there was so many things on his plate, you just can't get to everything. So we thought, hey, let's go after it. If we get it, we can split it up. But like the Supreme Court with 9, we're 3. So we could always vote on different situations. And it's really been a kind of very unique business model that I think is really working. And we're excited now and what the future holds.
Well, for those who are uninitiated, the MASL has been around for a number of years with lots of different franchises, frankly, spread across the entire U.S. and Mexico. I think a little bit of Canada, too, once in a while, right? And I guess the pointed question I would ask is this the, shall we say, the MISL reincarnated? I mean, is this this is a bona fide professional indoor soccer league, and in many respects is almost trying to, we've talked about this with lots of different folks, to kind of get the indoor game once again at a higher level. Maybe it's a folly to get to that MISL, spark from back in the day, but I would argue that people like JP and Shep and yourself, who have been part of that original MISL explosion and the things that came thereafter, there's an absolutely strong opportunity to indeed just do that, get it back to that sort of top, truly major level once again.
Well, incarnation is an interesting word, and/or continuation. The MASL is the continuation of the early MISL, and it dwarfed into different names and it went different directions. But where it is right now, Shep, JP, and I, because of the love of the game, and there were so many reasons why we do love it, because of the love of the game, we really felt that we've done so many things separately that we could do things collectively and maybe take it back to where it used to be. And we would be excited about that because of our love for the game.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to kind of understand sort of the beginnings of where this came about. Now, we talk with people like Ed Tepper, for example, right, at the founding, the beginnings, and even the primordial ooze, I guess, of what the MISL was back in the day. Really actually got its roots, depending on how historical one is, a long time prior in the 1920s even. But on a professional level, it's almost sort of this almost afterthought and sort of winter seasoning for North American soccer league clubs. And that begat a couple of exhibitions in Philadelphia with a Russian team, and then sparks sort of flew, and then a whole bunch of folks, and then one in particular kind of coalesced around an actual league and forming rules almost on the fly. Give us some background on you and how you got into the professional indoor game, because from my crack research, your memories, your entree into pro soccer really kind of started almost exclusively in indoor. Do I have that right? Yeah,
pretty much. The birth of the game, the sport, was pretty much, I think, 9 months. For the time Earl Foreman and Ed Tepper saw Moscow playing, soccer inside a hockey rink in Philadelphia. And then they decided, hey, you know what? Wouldn't this be a fantastic sport? And the next thing you know, they went to their friends like Walt Chesowitz. And so Walt, at that time, was the Olympic coach. I was going to Oneonta State University. I got asked to be in the Olympic player pool, went to Colorado Springs. So guys like Joe Maroney and Nego Pesa and David Bursick, and the names go on and on and on. We were all out there, and we went back for our senior season, and I was getting ready for the NASL draft, and Washington had interested me and drafted me, and I was like, okay, my season just got over. The draft's in January. I get a call from Keith Van Aaron mid-November. Now, Keith.
Keith, this is 1978-ish?
This is 78. Yep, 78. And I get a call from Keith Van Aaron at the athletic office in Oneonta State, because Keith is across the street at Hartford College. And he goes, hey, Keith, by the way, you just got drafted the number 1 into the MISL. And I literally said, Keith, what bar are you in? What are you talking about, the MISL? And he goes, yeah, there's this indoor league. They had a draft. Now, Walt Chesowitz, who was a friend of Earl's and Ed and Earl went to Walt and said, hey, can you do the college draft of all your Olympic pool players? So that's how that first draft happened. And if you looked at it, Ty Keogh and the list goes on, is that they took us from the player pool into indoor. So what happened, Tim, I then called the scout at Washington and said, hey, I have great news. Now, remember, at that time, I'm a broke college kid, right? So I said, I have great news. I'm going to play indoor. I got some money in my pocket. Pete Rose is my owner, and I'm going to be ready to play come, after the draft. And they said, well, we don't want you to do that. I was like, what? And they go, no, we don't want you to play indoor. And I'm like, okay, well, I won't play indoor if you guarantee that I will get drafted. And then they said, we can't do that either. And then I called Cincinnati up and said, by the way, I'll come and play for the kids. Many of us went in indoor that year. And many of us were not allowed to play in the NASL. And then as teams started losing the summer of 79, I want to say that Ty Keogh and Doc Lawson were the first guys that got re-signed in outdoor. And that was the first year of the birth of indoor. And it's funny because, Tim, not funny, but exciting for me, because I used to go to the New York Cosmos as a fan, and I would watch Shep. Next thing you know, Nassau Coliseum, December 22nd, 1978, Shep's on the other end of the field, and I'm on the other end of the field, and I'm playing against them, which was pretty wild.
So it almost feels to me like, in some respects, this parallels to some level some of the iterations of, let's call them, challenger leagues in basketball with the ABA and the World Hockey Association and even the World Football League. Although this is a different version of the sport of soccer. I mean, the NASL, and I would even sort of put the ASL somewhat separately. It certainly was not as well funded and competitive salary wise, I guess, for players. It almost is like a new entity that, in some respects, players coming out from college into the pros almost had maybe as a new chip in on their table that they could play, or something in their back pocket that they can almost use as I won't call it a negotiating tactic, but another option besides just the one major quote unquote outdoor soccer league in this country.
There was another road to travel. Exactly. I mean, it gave it a lot of ability of not only some of the top American players, but obviously MISL brought international players that were some of the best at the time around the world to play. But it also gave the ability for the young American kid who was graduating from college, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't have to go outdoor. I can go indoor, or I could go indoor-outdoor, because I played in the American Soccer League. So I played indoor, and then I would go play in the American Soccer League. And there was guys like, Pete Rose, like I said, was the owner. There was other prominent, like the Bartolo, the Bus family came into the game. So all of a sudden, the sport started to grow. It was perfect timing. NASL, they said, oh my gosh, baby, we should go indoor. They were in an influx of trouble maybe in the outdoor game. And next thing you know, the sport started growing and the crowd started getting bigger and more players were coming. And it was such an exciting time to be part of it. And now, 40 years later, here we are.
And they got even indignant, the NASL did, because arguably it was a birth, if you will, on their watch, right? Albeit, sock hawk tournaments and sort of toe dipping, I guess, until it took the MISL guys to kind of put a bow around it and actually legitimately set it up as a league. And the NASL wanted its cut. It's especially when they saw how exciting it was and how some decent crowds were being drawn.
Exactly. And there was talks at the table about blending it together, combining however that would look. I don't know. But again, sometimes in business, people don't see eye to eye. They think their thing is better than the other. So they split. They didn't do anything. And then, a year or so later, the NASL. And so the indoor league then became kind of like the the life support for soccer in this country. If you look at who then came in the indoor, if you look at the referee program, S.C. Bahamas, who just won an award at the coaches convention, Joel Macknick, Gino DiPolito, Brian Hall, head of CONCACAF. You could go down of who in this country of referees then went indoor in order to prepare to go back outdoor. And you can talk about the players too. I mean, you had Preki, and then he goes outdoor, becomes a 2-time MVP. You got, Fernando Clavillo, who then went on to star, in Dallas and was the technical director. Zoran Savic, assistant coach in sporting. You got Smetzer, head coach in Seattle. Then you got Chris Wright, who became the president of Minnesota Timberwolves, and then all of a sudden, in MLS, Lenny Komoroski with the Cleveland Cavaliers. You had referees, you had coaches, you had players in front office staff that were born in indoor soccer and then went on to bigger things. And they all are interested in this new movement of how they can help us moving forward.
All right. So take me back to 78, because we're assuming, or the assumption is that you wanted to be a professional soccer player as a career, or was that sort of one of the things you were considering coming out of college? I mean, did you have a course of study and a real job pursuit, so to speak, or was soccer always on your mind as the first and only pursuit?
As a typical young athlete in this country, I played a majority of the sports other than basketball. I played hockey, baseball, football. My brother Tom brought home a soccer ball at the age of 13. And it captivated me because it was something that I could train on my own, but playing it within a team. So I started playing in junior in high school, led my team. Next thing you know, a guy named Francisco Marcus calls me up, senior in high school. And he said, "Hey, I want you to play for Team USA at this international tournament at Hartford College." And I'm like, wow, there's like Team USA and stuff. So next thing you know, I go to Hartford College. I'm with guys like Tommy Mulroy and Tom Byers and a bunch of guys from New York and around the country. And next thing you know, I loved Oneonta. But I tried to get into Hartwick. I couldn't. Coach Garstam at Oneonta said, "Why don't you come and play?" I then went and played there. And next thing you know, I'm doing really good. And Jimmy Lennox, who was the coach across at Hartwick, said, "Hey, Keith, we were playing indoor soccer in our gym during the winter. Why don't you come over?" So next thing you know, Jim was a friend of Walt. And next thing you know, I get invited to the player pool. And next thing you know, I get drafted. So within 5-6 years, I went from not knowing soccer, didn't even know there was professional leagues. And next thing you know, I'm playing professionally. I was like, hey, how cool is this? So I had no aspirations of playing professional soccer, really didn't know about it. One thing led to another, and it's all about relationships. And just met one person after another. And next thing you know, there I am in Nassau Coliseum, playing against Shep Messing and the New York Arrows.
Yeah, and you, among many others, could be forgiven for not knowing that there was a professional soccer outdoor league or even the beginnings of this indoor thing, whatever that was, because it was the United States, and the Pele thing didn't happen until 75, and even that was still considered a foreign sport and all that stuff. All right, well, I got to ask you then. All right, so you're aware certainly of the outdoor game. You're clearly aware of the NASL with the Washington Diplomats putting you on their draft board. But what do you know about this indoor thing, and how does it become a real choice for you? Because it doesn't sound like there's a whole lot of there at this point. You're coming out of college literally at the time that this thing is being formed.
Yeah, what happened was that, I went to the Cincinnati kids. Pete Rose then signed with Philadelphia. So he takes off to Philadelphia. Now the kids are not going to be in Cincinnati. But the Pennsylvania Stoners call me of the American Soccer League. So, we're with Matt Barr and Jeff Tipping and, Florian Kemp, who kicked for Houston, and so Art Napolitano. So I go play, but I had promised my parents at that time. I left Oneonta halfway through my senior year. I was going for a BS in business economics. I played one summer in the ASL. I went back to Oneonta, assistant coach, helped the coach. I came out in December, and I'm like, I got to go back in indoor. Got to make some money, and I love the game. But everybody just started, and they're like, well, even though I did really good, they're like, oh, you know what? We don't have room. Hartford Hellions were struggling. I went to an open tryout with 150 other people, snuck to the front of the line, they played 5-minute games. They put numbers on your shirt like you're in a marathon. They give you 5 minutes, then they say, thank you very much, you're done. And I'm like, I got to get to the front of the line. I played the third game. They said, play 5 more minutes. I played 5 more minutes, play another 5. I played another 5. I played my fourth 5. And then I heard someone say, hey, can you come up to the bleachers? I came up. The coach said, I got my guy, went downtown Hartford, signed a contract that evening, got on an airplane the next day, flew to Wichita, started, and I was back in indoor.
How can you describe those first early years in the MISL? I mean, the kids obviously were a one and done. The Hellions were an interesting franchise, to say the least. I think they had, weren't they something before they became Hartford the year before?
No, I think they're always the Hartford
expansion.
They lasted 3 years.
3, right. But okay, so you've got a couple of those years under your belt. I mean, you kind of hinted at it before. Everybody's feeling out this game for the first time, right? It had to be both exciting and yeah, well, loving it. Okay. But it's got to be a little bit frustrating too, especially maybe for the referees and the laws of the game, as our former guest, Joe Matchnick, would tell us that, sometimes there would be a little bit of creativity, applied as situations presented themselves. But, when did you kind of when did it become fun and curiosity? And then when did it click to sort of say, you know what, this is a real sport. I think I'm in the beginnings of something really significant here.
Yeah, when I went to Hartford, Pittsburgh Spirit bought me from Hartford. I went to Pittsburgh, and I'm like, Pittsburgh? Well, what is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania? And that's when I really fell in love with the game. That franchise was great. It was owned by the DeBartolo family. John Kowalski was my coach, who was my first coach in Cincinnati, and my coach with Hartford. So there was a relationship there. I loved Pittsburgh because it was a beer and a shot, sports town, just really good people, really good owners. And this is where I met JP. JP worked in the front office. Chris Wright, like I said, went on to Minnesota. He was our boss there. Just wonderful people. Lenny Komoroski, who I said went on to Cleveland, he was in the front office. It was just like a really great group of guys owned by a really good owner at the time. And the game started kind of like settling down where we knew the rules. We kind of started figuring out tactics, and crowds started coming. I mean, to play at the Igloo in front of 10 or 11,000 people, and then traveling to other arenas like Madison Square Garden, which I never thought growing up in New York that I'd play at the Garden. And then next thing you know, there we are playing at the Garden against Shep and the Arrows. Then it started to really click. Wow, this thing is really moving fast.
How punishing were those early years in terms of travel, in terms of, I guess, the manner in which the arenas were treating this new fledgling league? We talked to Johnny Buss in a previous episode that, even at the Forum, right, they were the third or sometimes even fourth tier tenant, if you will, in some of these buildings. And I'm sure not every arena was, welcoming, especially when there were NBA and or NHL franchises to kind of tend to first, so to speak.
Sometimes you felt like you were the third rung on the ladder. But again, we're young guys. We're getting money in our pocket. We're traveling the country. We're playing a game we love, even though it's indoor. The sport is taking off. You got the Lewicki brothers in the comments. They're bringing music. Next thing you know, we got music in the game. Next thing you know, we're running through lasers and fog being introduced, disco balls up in the ceiling. All of a sudden, the marketing started taking off in this game. Next thing you know, I became a player coach in another league. I went back with the Buss family, and you mentioned John. I had 3 fantastic years coaching the Lazers, and it just kept growing and growing and getting bigger and bigger. And then, somebody didn't like what this was way it was going, and somebody didn't like this thing, and then NASL, outdoor soccer started coming back, and but in those mid '80s, it was just fantastic. It was great to play. It was huge crowds, great owners, fantastic players, and great people in the front office, and wonderful fans.
What cities and teams did you enjoy visiting the most, and sort of have your eyes wide open? And are there any that kind of stood out as being, and talking MISL here first before we move on to the, that you found surprising and or ultimately lamentable? And I'll give you a hint on the second category. You're talking to perhaps one of the handful of people who will admit that they were season ticket holders to the not even one season New Jersey Rockets. So, so go for it. a team that should have done better on so many different fronts, but didn't.
Yeah, Timo Liakowski was the head coach, right?
I mean, talk about a great coach to kind of start a franchise with, but so many other things went wrong with that team.
Yeah, I really liked that building. I really loved going to Chicago Stadium and playing against this thing. I mean, the play against Granitza and Pato and those guys, the second tier in the Chicago Stadium was straight up. You come onto the field behind one of the goals. I mean, that atmosphere, 15,000 people, that atmosphere was fantastic. But then you'd turn around and you go to Baltimore. And Baltimore, I mean, 10,000 people, sold out stadiums, Stankovic, Pat Urkelai, Joey Fink. That was fantastic. But then you go all the way across the country to the Dome in Tacoma with 20,000 people, with Zungul and Preki and Jumping Joey Waters and Godfrey Ingram. That was fantastic. Then you head down to Dallas with Tattoo and Gordon Jago. I mean, think about what the buildings I just said. With just wonderful places, Minnesota with the Strikers up there. I mean, there was iconic stadiums with wonderful crowds, and we thought, hey, we're riding this wild horse, and we don't know where it's going, but it's wonderful. Kemper Arena. I mean, I played in front of Kemper, 15,000 people, and you couldn't hear your teammate 15 feet in front of you. I mean, those were the days where you would leave on a 2-week road trip and you'd fly from, wherever you were to Baltimore, go to Tacoma, go back to Cleveland, head to Dallas, and then go back home. Just wonderful times.
Yeah, but for every one of those teams, right, there was a San Francisco Fog, Detroit Lightning, these are, franchises that, came and went, right? And not unlike a lot of other fledgling sports entities, right? Maybe the right or the wrong owners, the wrong situations, maybe too many teams in a market, like in the case perhaps of the Rockets, which, from a media perspective and the New York Arrows, championships in the shadows, it had to be an interesting and sometimes uneven experience, right? Despite some of those great highs that you just described.
Yeah, you're playing at the Cow Palace. You mentioned the Fog in San Francisco. Even though you're in San Francisco, cool city, not really big crowds. There were some other buildings that, especially in the middle part of indoor soccer, where now the name has changed and now it's the NPSL or the AISA. Things have changed. But again, the foundation of everything was always the sport and the people that you met in it. And that's really why Shep JP and I came back. It's because of the sport and the people that we know in it, and maybe leave a legacy of how do we not only take it back, but maybe even make it bigger. That to me was really challenging. That, when you're a player and a coach, as an athlete, you get that competitiveness almost on a daily basis. And then sometimes when you leave it, you want it back. And this has really been competitive each and every day to try to get it moving forward.
Before we kind of get to sort of that next level, tell me about the AISA, because I think a lot of indoor soccer fans were unaware, especially if they weren't in these somewhat smaller, often Midwestern markets, that there was this competitor. Some people would argue it was a competitive league with a different model against the MISL. Some would have said it was more of a, I won't call it minor league, but more of a feeder or some kind of partner league eventually, or at least anticipated with the MISL. I mean, you jumped in with both feet, because when you went from Pittsburgh to Louisville, you became not only a player, but you were also the coach too, right?
Yeah. Wow, what a strange time that was. Like I said, I loved Pittsburgh. And I was invited with Dave McKenzie and Ricky Schweitzer, who were teammates in Pittsburgh, to go to Louisville to do a summer camp for kids. Well, we went there. Peter Malak was the general manager of the soccer club. He treated us wonderful. The Kentucky Derby, met wonderful people. The following year we came back. And some of the parents of the kids said, could you do a coaching course? So we did some coaching, fell in love with it. Well, Steve Paxos and some other guys started the AISA. I was in my last year of my contract. I was by far not the best player in Pittsburgh, but I was one of the most popular players. And the guys in Louisville said, hey, would you come and coach our team? And I said, hey, can I be a player coach? Because I want to play. And they said, sure, you can do whatever you want. So then Chris Wright and John Kowalski, they found out and they go, well, we want you to stay in Pittsburgh. And I said, well, I already gave my word in Louisville. So they upped my money and upped my money and upped my money. But I said, look, my word's my word. I hopped in a car, which was very difficult, with the U-Haul. After 6 or 7 years in Pittsburgh, all my great friends, got to Louisville, got into Mockingbird Valley Training Center. Peter Malak, the GM, he sees me. He walks up to me, gets me 2 beers, and he goes, you want the bad news or the good news? I go, give me the good news. He goes, you got a beer. I go, what's the bad news? He goes, the ownership group fell through. I was like, what? Am I going to call Chris and John back and go, I'm kidding? So my first 2 weeks in Louisville was to help Peter find owner in order for me to stay there. And next thing you know, we had a fantastic team.
Won the championship your third year there, right?
Well, that Jimmy took over. We were in the finals the first year against Canton, lost. We were in the finals the second year and lost. Got into the third year, and halfway through, my agent called and said, hey, by the way, the Bus family just fired Peter Wall. Why don't you come out for an interview? And I'm like, I'm only 27 years old. There's no way they're going to hire me.
Wait, you were 27 when you became coach of the LA Lazers?
Yeah, 27, 28. It was really young.
You must have been were you the youngest coach in the league at that point?
Well, I believe I was, because, Tim, when I walked into the hotel across from the Forum, which I think is where the Rams play, where the racetrack was, I walk into the restaurant, and this was during the MISL All-Star game. So it was a break, right? I see Don Popovic, Dave Clements, and John Kowalski, my coach. And I walk in, and they go, hey, Keith, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I think I'm here for the same reason you guys are. And those guys are great coaches. I mean, Don's won 4 championships, and of course, John and Dave. And I sat next to Jim and Jerry for the first half of the game, and something happened, and I said, oh, wow. And they said, what? And I took out a piece of paper and I wrote some stuff down, and then later, well, what? And wrote some stuff down. And then after the game in the Forum Club, Jerry and Jim come up to me and said, hey, young man, it's great to see you. We'll be in touch with you. Well, you know what in touch with you means. Thanks for coming, but we won't call you. Well, when I got back to Louisville, they had already called and wants me to go coach LA. So now there's a battle between Louisville and the AISA and me going to Los Angeles. But I ended up going to LA, and I became the head coach there.
All right, what's this? LinkedIn Jobs. Hey, these days it can be hard to find and hire the right candidates for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs made it easier to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 770 million people. My goodness. Focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, and use screening questions to get your role in front of only the most qualified. Then use the simple tools on LinkedIn Jobs to quickly filter and prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. Yes, it's no surprise, friends, that LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Of course. Well, did you know that every week that nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Come on. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/goodseats. That's linkedin.com/goodseats to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And now back to our conversation. All right, so explain to me then the difference from going from Pittsburgh to the AISA, which ultimately became the second incarnation of the MPSL, and the first of its indoor version, and then going, shall we say, back up, right? Because going to LA, it's not just LA and the Lazers and and all the sort of allure that comes with that market, but it's also the friggin' bus family, right? Which is the Lakers and the Kings and the Forum and all that stuff, right? I mean, it almost feels to me like you're going from, a good situation in Pittsburgh, a solid franchise, pretty well liked franchise, in some cases even outdrawing the Penguins on a number of different occasions. Then you're going to Louisville, which is almost sort of an earlier stage startup / challenger to a league itself, the MISL, that wasn't sort of fully established per se, only a handful of years old. And then you're going back up to now maybe arguably an even higher wattage situation in Los Angeles. How are you mentally, I guess, handling all of these shifts and stuff? I mean, it's still indoor soccer, but they're on certainly different stages along this way.
One of the big reasons, Tim, why I went to Louisville is because my teammates in Pittsburgh and my other teams, those guys were making a lot of money, obviously training a couple times a day, playing games on the weekend. When their career was over, they were going to go back to whatever country or whatever state they came from, and they were going to work 4 times the amount of hours to make 4 times less money. And I said to myself, remember, I said I went after a business economics degree. I needed to figure out the afterlife. So when I was asked to go to Louisville, I was like, wow, I can learn how to be a coach, which I had no aspiration, Tim, at all to be a coach. I could still play, which means I could start every game. And I could maybe learn the business side of the sport. That would be my afterlife. Well, somehow I had Zorn Savick, Bobby Joe, Brian Haynes. I mean, I had a wonderful team in Louisville. Next thing you know, I get called to go to LA, and I'm like, this is really not happening to me. My player budget in Louisville was $78,000 for 20 players. Next thing you know, my office is in the Forum. I have $1.25 million budget, not including housing and this and that. I'm on a plane with Dr. Buss and Jimmy and heading to a Laker game in Denver. They signed me to a half a season and a full season. Now, they never, I believe, won more than 8 games in a season. I could be a little bit wrong with that, but I believe that half a season we won 18 games. Then Dr. Buss and Jimmy and I were out at a restaurant, and Jim said, Keith, can you have your agent call us? And I go, why? Well, to do next year's contract. And I go, you guys already got me under contract. And they go, well, how much do you want to make? And I'm like, what? And they go, how much do you want to make? And I'm like, oh, God, don't go too low. Don't go too high. And the first full season, we had the second best record in the MISL. To me, to be with the Buss family, who were extremely so smart in business. And Rogie Vachon runs past my office and he's yelling, we got him, we got him. And I walk out and we go, who got who? And they got Kretzky. And then you got Magic Johnson and you got, Cooper and you got Kareem. I mean, at 27, 28 years old, I'm in the middle of this sports mecca learning so much about business and the game. It was to go from Pittsburgh, which I love, to Louisville, which I needed, to go to LA, which I really wanted. It just kind of worked out perfectly.
Describe LA, though. That this was a franchise. I mean, I hinted at it before, and Johnny Buss sort of said it too. This was, in some respects, the Lazers were not even the third class citizen, in some cases even fourth, right? I mean, there was clearly synergies about even before that was sort of a thing. It's sort of commonplace today. I mean, Paula Abdul and the Laker girls are becoming the Laser girls for a couple of games. Okay, that's great. And the ability to share ticket sales and kind of sort of incentivize Laker and King fans to, also take in games. But there's also clearly no avoiding the fact that you were getting Monday night dates and that kind of stuff. And LA is a far more complicated entertainment environment, right? So many different distractions and choices, even back in the 80s when things were much more limited than they are today. I mean, it had to be a bit frustrating sometimes to even with that great season of 87, 88, where you, I guess, helped have the largest attendance of the franchise history, 5,879 per game that season. That's got to be a little hard, though, when there's still another 12, 13,000 seats to fill. How does it feel being a big deal in indoor soccer, yet in LA, I don't want to say ignored, but Lord knows they did try many different things to kind of get people to come to the games, and it never seemed to really take off from an attendance perspective.
Well, LA is a very difficult market. And as you alluded to the fact, it was the Lakers, the Kings. We had professional volleyball. Jeannie had professional tennis. You had concerts. There was a lot of things going on. I was so focused on trying to bring a winning team to the Bus family and to Southern California. Sometimes the crowds, yes. There was a joke that I think the first 10 balls kicked into the stands, you got to keep, and they said they would find 3 or 4 after the game, right, in a section. But that didn't matter to me. My thing was I wanted to bring a winning team to the Lazers, and I think we did pretty good at that. Sometimes, Tim, I'd get a player, I'd do an appearance, and I'd be in Tarzana, which is, up in the valley, which from Redondo Beach, where I live, that could be an hour and a half to hour and 45. Two days later, I'm doing an appearance in Huntington Beach, which could be 2 hours to the south. So it is a mega metropolis where, where do you target market? And we were in Inglewood, which is not really at that time one of the biggest soccer communities. The soccer communities were more down in the south or way up in the north, and that's, the travel to the Forum would be difficult. I firmly believe, though, that if the Lazers stuck it out, that the Lazers would have been a very successful franchise as far as the crowds were concerned. And I think that franchise would have been great.
But by the late 80s, though, the MISL was getting a little, I don't want to say long in the tooth, but certainly was getting wobbly. And having, somebody like Jerry Buss and his family believe in the league early on, having seen those gigantic crowds in St. Louis and being wined and dined by Messrs. Tepper and Earl Foreman, right? That's the place to do it, right? Is a sold out Checker Dome to convince them that it's a worthwhile thing. Clearly they had enough by the end of your tenure, and arguably it wasn't from anything that you could have done. I think it was just a matter of and the way if I remember the conversation with Johnny, he kind of just sort of said, we don't see the league's vision going forward here.
That's exactly right. I mean, I remember Jerry calling me in his office, and he told me, Coach, I love this game of indoor. He goes, I just don't like the direction of the league office and their plans moving forward. I think John would tell you, I think Jim, Jeannie, obviously Jerry would all tell you they love the game of indoor. They just didn't think that the direction and the blueprint was what they needed. So Jerry said to me, hey, by the way, I have a boxing card twice a month. Mike Garrett, former Heisman Trophy winner. He's the boss over there. Do you and Don Ebert want to become assistant marketing directors for Forum Boxing? And I'm like, okay, well, if you're not going to do indoor soccer, I got to make a living and I got to learn something else. So I started doing that. And then 6 months into the boxing world, Atlanta reached out to me. They said, hey, we'd love for you to coach. I went to Jim and Jerry and said, hey, what do you think? And they said, Coach, we're always behind you. Good luck to you. If you need to come back, come back. So again, they loved the indoor game. They just didn't feel that the blueprint was the right way to go. Now, you remember Jerry and them started Prime Ticket. So they were doing sports in Southern California. They changed the name of the Forum Club. I mean, there was a lot of moving parts at that time. And indoor soccer maybe wasn't at the top of the ladder.
Did you and Johnny ever discuss the Continental Indoor Soccer League idea? I remember vividly in our conversation that indeed a lot of them did like the sport. And I think it was sort of discussed, geez, what if we did it during the summer? It might be a better business model, get some co-ownership or overlapping ownership with NBA or NHL teams and stuff. or were you kind of essentially already out the door back into what now was the NPSL, I think, with the Atlanta Attack?
No, yeah, no. At that time, John and Ron Weinstein, who was the general manager president, they brought in Peter Wall, and Peter, wonderful coach, obviously great player back in England. When I came, Jim took over for John, so I didn't have much contact with John. I had more contact with Ron, who's the GM. Jim,
another former guest of ours, and I'm wondering if Ronnie was in the mix for that conversation, or maybe they just didn't get to you in time before you left.
No, Ron was in the mix, because really it was Ron's brainchild that he went to Jerry after they left the MISL, and he pitched it to Jerry. Hey, by the way, buildings during the summer are more than empty. The cost is lower. You don't have football. You don't have hockey. What you got is baseball. That was really Ron's brainchild. I remember having conversations with Ron and him going, hey, by the way, and obviously John was in that mix. So, but at that time, I was already across the street at the Prime Ticket office, which was the boxing office. And Don and I and Mike were doing boxing, and they were doing blueprints to see what the CISL would be. But then all of a sudden I got a call from Atlanta, and a guy named Graham Tutt said, hey, why don't you come down here for an interview? And I went there, and next thing I was back in indoor.
So another former guest of ours, Graham Buster Tutt, which is a fascinating story in and of itself, a lot of overcoming of obstacles and stuff. Describe to me this Atlanta situation, because that only, I think only lasted a season in Atlanta, or was it two?
No, we had 2 seasons,
and it was still the AISA, but only for one of those seasons, right? So I guess the question in there is, number one, Atlanta had a couple of bites of the soccer cherry for sure, and the outdoor level, but also the indoor Chiefs, who had done actually better than the outdoor version in the early part of the 80s. So I think some of that kind of bled over to the attack. But I'm also curious about sort of this transitional period from this, I guess it was the last year of the AISA, to the transformation into the rebranding and, I guess, different newer business model of the NPSL at that time. So a lot to unpack there, but go for it.
Yeah, well, everything starts at the top. And I know that's an old cliche, but I think that's really important in business, is if you have the right owner, it makes it so much easier for the coach or the president. Ron Terwilliger was the owner. He was CEO and managing general partner of Trammell Crow, one of the largest real estate companies in the country. A great guy. Loved the game, loved to treat his team correctly. Graham Tutt was the GM, and we hit it off. I mean, he hits it off with everybody. The general manager was a good guy. So I brought Zoran Savic, Peter Hattrip. I was at a barbecue, and someone said, hey, Coach, you got to draft this kid named Brian Haynes, a Trinidad Tobago kid out of Erskine College. I drafted him, and Haynes became all-star, all-rookie, Major League Soccer. We just had a really, really good team and a really nice building in a really cool city. And it was wonderful because, again, I was in indoor soccer, pretty much family-orientated. I then went into the boxing world, which is a little bit different. Then I went back to what I loved. I actually came out of retirement. One of my second child passed away at 6 weeks old, and I needed that outlet. So I asked, hey, could I go back to playing and coaching? So I actually played and coached for a season. But it was great. And then what happened, Tim, a year and a half later, the housing, real estate, bomb came, and Ron needed to move the team, and we took the Atlanta Attack, and it became the Kansas City Attack. So then there I was on the road again.
And then something very interesting comes. So you were in Kansas City for only a short period of time, though, right? For one more season, was it?
7 months.
Okay. But then something, I guess, for lack of a better word, transformative happened, right? Now, by this time, the NPSL was the new name for the formerly known AISA.
Correct.
And it was still sort of looked upon as sort of the, I wouldn't call it minor league, but sort of a still challenger to this MISL, which itself had gone a bit sideways, this major soccer league rebranding. There was, I think, a lot of talk about trying to harmonize indoor and outdoor schedules so that a team or players at least could, to your earlier hinting, play both in somewhat of a harmonized contractual way that would be enable both owners and players to kind of taste excitement both indoors and outdoors and make a full year business out of it. But tell us about this little thing called the Milwaukee Wave, which still exists to this day, because in many respects, I would wonder that the MSL model would have been attractive to you too. But tell me how Milwaukee comes about, and more importantly, how does it wind up becoming your mainstay for, God, it was almost a dozen years or so, no?
24 years, actually.
Sorry, twice that. I apologize.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. I went to Kansas City with the attack for 7 months because my second son passed away. We had special doctors. My wife was pregnant again. At that time, when I was in Atlanta before I went to Kansas City, I think it was the 1990 World Cup, Italy. Is that right? 90?
Yes, that's correct.
90?
3 and out.
Okay, 90. Yeah, so I worked for TNT for that World Cup with Ernie Johnson and Craig Sager and all those guys. I fell in love with television. Again, going back to my business thing, my marketing with Forum Boxing, it was like another thing that I got really excited about. Well, I went to Kansas City. I was there 7 months by myself. I was flying back and forth. Once we lost in the playoffs, I was like, I'm done. I'm going to try to go work back at TNT, whichever way I can. I'm done with it. So I moved back to Atlanta.
I'm sorry, you're saying you're done with the soccer business.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Now you remember I went to LA and then
because it's not a stable business for sure. Still kind of isn't. I mean, you're a coach for sure, but it takes a special breed. I don't mean to interrupt, but it takes a special breed, and we've talked about this for many, many different conversations, right? You have to have this belief, right? Because the business, at least certainly at that point, was very, very hard to kind of sort of rely upon for anything, especially life in general, right? Like paying the bills and dealing with health insurance and all the other things that come along in life. Sadly, the things that you had to encounter.
Yeah. And remember, I keep saying my business mind, I'm constantly trying to learn, right? I'm trying to make sure that I have different spokes in this wheel so that if I'm out of soccer, that I can continue to do something. So I said, I'm done. I'm going to go back to Atlanta. I live in the South. I love it down there. My last couple games in Kansas City, we played against Milwaukee Wave. And one of the owners, Ron Cretin, he came up to me on the field and he said, Keith, one day you're going to coach for me. And I'm like, I think you're tampering. Just joking. And sure enough, he called me up and he said, Keith, we'd love for you to come up to Milwaukee. And I'm like, Ron, I went to Kansas City for a year. I was in Atlanta for 2 years. And then I was in LA for 3 years. I don't know. He said, why don't you just come up and talk with us? So I flew up and talked to a guy named Jim Peters and Ron Cretin, the two owners. And they talked me into signing, I think, a 3-year deal at the beginning. I moved my family up. 3 years turned into another 5-year contract. Before my 5-year contract, they signed me to another 5-year contract. Before that one, they signed me to another 5-year contract. And I ended up coaching the Milwaukee Wave for a wonderful 24 years of my life.
Okay, how does that happen given the background that you just described of a year here and playing and coaching there and MISL this and then AISA that, and you're basically we're beyond the point of sticking around in this business, and here then now you find your longest lasting gig, so to speak. How does that situation happen? It almost feels to me like the only similar situation I could even think of is the ownership group that's been around or had been for quite some time with Baltimore over the many years in their second and third incarnations. Ed Hale. But did you just stumble into a situation that was so rare and lucrative, or describe the Milwaukee situation, because it's not common or hadn't been common, certainly by that point.
Again, it goes back to the top. Ron Cretan and Jim Peters were wonderful owners. You know, they were owners that said, just like Jerry Buss was, just like all the other owners I had up into that time, is look, I'm hiring you as a coach and GM. They didn't micromanage. They said, look, you have a talent. We're going to let you do what you got to do. Now, if you need to lean on us, lean on us. And I did that. And they were also astute business people. Jim was in the world of building leaders, and Ron was an entrepreneur in a lot of different ways, which kind of fit my mindset, right? And they let me do what I needed to do. It's not carte blanche, but if you hire somebody, especially in sports, hire them and let them do what they do well. And they were fantastic at it. And then, you know, you alluded to the fact sometimes about minor league. If you ask any of my players who played for our teams, I always said that underneath the word professional in a dictionary doesn't say you have to make $1 million. I would think that all the players would say that we tried to run whatever team we had as professional as we possibly could. And part of the reason is that when you came to our city, our arena, and played against our team, we wanted players to say, oh my God, I got to come to this franchise and play. So the mindset between that ownership and where I wanted to go to, and now remember the journey. I became a player coach and a GM. I learned how to do per diem. I learned how to do airline tickets. I learned how to do all those different things. So when I came to Milwaukee, it came great. And then there was the summer camp issue. And we grew the summer camp from a $50,000 entity to almost $1 million entity. So the business side, and then the crowds came. And then at the same time, Tim, my coach, John Kowalski, got me in to be the head coach of the national team. So 20 out of the 24 years, I was the head coach of the national team futsal, and I was traveling the world, and I was learning more. And I was bringing some methodology back and some players from Brazil. And then we started winning championships. And the big thing that we all talk about is with the Milwaukee Wave, we built a culture similar to maybe like New England Patriots. You put on that jersey, and what other franchise you have, you put on a jersey, and it makes you just be better. And we built a culture. We had a system. We had fantastic fans. It was just a wonderful place to coach and player. And we had some fantastic players here.
And it's fascinating to me because this is a franchise that even before you arrived and for the bulk of it, I mean, this is a team that started in the fledgling AISA in 1984-85, right? And it went through, I don't know, 5 different leagues. I mean, the MPSL and then the second incarnation of the MISL, which is part of a rebranding. There was a 1-year thing called the XSL, if people remember Tony Viola and the New Jersey Ironmen and that sort of thing for one season. And then the MISL sort of version 3. And now the major arena soccer league, and the Wave has been there ever since. This is a franchise. Yeah. I mean, that speaks to something beyond just, hey, let's have a team in a league and maybe win a few championships. I mean, there's something much more for management, fans, the experience, whatever, to kind of keep this game going regardless of what the league is at that point.
If you're a part of the Milwaukee Wave, not only in the city of Milwaukee, but really the entire state, wherever you go, and still to this day, I just today at a grocery store, someone came up to me. The Milwaukee Wave are really, really big in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin. And people look at it. I mean, obviously the Packers, the Bucks, and the Brewers, even the Milwaukee Admirals are very big here, Marquette basketball. But the people put the Wave right up there. I mean, they've been here between Baltimore Blast, which is this weekend going to celebrate their 40th year. You got the Milwaukee Wave, which is the longest running professional soccer franchise in North America. They have a great culture. They have a great backing, and it was, you know, I said to someone the other day, it was a privilege to coach them for so many years, and it wasn't my right. It was a really true honor to be here as long as I was. Well,
look, I think there's a reason why they also kept you around. I mean, you won 6 championships. You You went to the final game 4 times to coming just short. I mean, for 21 seasons or so, I mean, more than half of those, or about half of those, you were walking away with some major hardware, right? And plus also to your point, right? You're it's bigger than that because you're also part of, I guess, what the business is of the Wave, which is not just about selling tickets for the arena, but all the other things that come along with that, like licensing and the soccer camps and all that kind of stuff, right? So, to me, it feels, sadly, it's more of an exception than it has been the rule in the realm of pro soccer, but perhaps we're maybe in a different era. We're sort of entering in a new one where, I think money, investment, private equity, tokens and crypto, who knows? It just seems that sports is in a gigantic boomlet right now. And I think indoor soccer, it has its right place in it, anew, perhaps.
Yeah, in 1978, 79, I know my mom and dad said, "Oh my God, son, this is the perfect time for you to be in the sport. Soccer is booming in this country." But if you really look at now, the cell phone, social media, TikTok, Twitch, YouTube, maybe this is the perfect time for indoor soccer to make its next big leap, because maybe the technology, how our young generation is now, and everything is short and quick. Maybe indoor soccer is now the perfect time. Technology may be caught up to indoor soccer, and together we're going to take it to the next level. You got the World Cup coming to Qatar. You got the World Cup coming to North America 4 years later. There's going to be big announcements here. We're at the coaches convention to get back into the conversation. We're going to have a player combine, a college draft. I maybe think this is the perfect time. And this journey with Shep and JP has been so great the last 7 months. A lot of hard work, some uphills and some downhills, but hopefully we'll get there.
All right. So before we sort of wrap up, describe to me then how a major arena soccer league competes both with just the blizzard of other choices for sports and entertainment, frankly, but also now in a soccer environment that, for better or for worse, is maybe it's an embarrassment of riches now. Some would say even oversaturated, or certainly saturated in terms of television coverage, international games, at one's fingertips, and an outdoor league now that, at least from a facility perspective and a staying power perspective, is got some solid roots to it. I know, soccer snobs are going to sort of, throw bricks at, the quality of play and the all that kind of stuff. I don't, that's not the place for this conversation, but it's a different outdoor soccer world. Let's put it that way. Right. And we were talking about some of your early years in the indoor game. To your point earlier, during the 80s, indoor literally saved this sport, right? Because it was the only professional game in town of any, because the MASL collapsed, right? It was dark days. I don't think the days are as dark now, and I would argue your competition is even more challenging, but there's no denying that the product of indoor soccer, the skill, the speed, the excitement, is certainly something that still holds up today. And I guess I'm just curious as to how you grow this to sort of stand out and get to, shall we say, that next level, or is it really a world of knowing thy niche and really deepening it and not trying to be another NBA, but being the best MASL you can be?
Yeah, I think if you know Shep, JP, and I, we want it bigger than just a niche sport. Are we going to be as big as the Big Five now? Because some people put Major League Soccer up there. We got a long way to go. Those sports have been around for 100 years. We've been saying throughout this conversation, everything starts with ownership with money. The better owners that we get in the future with the ones that we already have, and they're committed to put wind in their sails and maybe lose a little bit money as they then produce money moving forward. I think that's key. I think getting sponsorships, I think getting new expansion in and getting new blood and expansion, meaning owners with deep pockets that have a deep vision to go a long way, I think that's going to really help the cause. And I think we're going to get there. I really feel that they're out there. I mean, if you looked at the USL grew rapidly from 500,000 to maybe $10 million a franchise. There's a lot of wealthy people around here. Here's another thing. I travel the country extensively with U.S. Youth Futsal, right? I'm still involved in the futsal game. There are wonderful players, young players in this country that just need the opportunity to be seen, kind of like how I was back in Oneonta State. You're going to continue to see the play in this league continue to get better with the combine, with the college draft, with us being back into the conversation that, yeah, there is outdoor soccer. Yeah, there is futsal. Yeah, there is beach soccer, but there's also indoor soccer. And here's another avenue for you to go, both on the ownership, the sponsorship, the coaching, the player, and the front office. We're here, and we're going to take it to the next level.
All right, last question. Do you see so on the ownership side, I'm assuming that also possibly means maybe trying to convince an NBA owner or an NHL owner or some other indoor arena, entity or so to kind of also kind of jump in. I think the Arena Football League was kind of in that same sort of boat too. But I also wonder too if outdoor soccer, some aspect of it, maybe not Major League Soccer because it's so sort of foregone, so to speak, but maybe USL, maybe NISA, maybe some other relationship with the outdoor game that in some respects could harmonize with the indoor game and itself give some outdoor indoor year-long kind of co-marketing push. I'm throwing ideas out there, but it feels to me like there are a number of different avenues to explore with this.
Part of the conversation is that indoor soccer lost the fact that indoor soccer could be a great developer for players for outdoor, as well as referees. When I was coaching indoor soccer, people would say the boards, it's a safety net. But if you talk to my players, if someone passed the ball to a teammate and missed them, I might blow the whistle and they'd say, why are you blowing the whistle? I got the ball back. Well, in outdoor, it would have been a throw in, and in indoor, and futsal would have been a kick in. So you can use the boards tactically. A lot of the guys that are coaching Major League Soccer, or Mike Noonan, who just won a national championship at Clemson, who played for me in Louisville, or Johnny Torres, who coaches Creighton University, who is a Herman Trophy winner twice. They all say indoor soccer teaches a lot of great things like individual defense and how to move the ball forwards and counterattack and restarts. Indoor soccer just lost that conversation. That's what we're trying to get back to it. And I think the more we talk about it, like great shows like yours, and the things that JP are doing at the media level, I think we're going to get back into the conversation. And I'm going to think you're going to see great things. At the ownership level, people become owners for a lot of different reasons. Maybe because of their kids. Maybe they have aspirations to be a politician. Maybe they like the business model. But owners like to be together with big other owners to do other kind of business. As soon as you get one or two that come into this league, then I think that will be the catapult to push us forward.
Yeah, and too, I think you've got some nostalgic connections too that can be mined, and I think genuinely too, right? So, a San Diego Soccer is an iconic franchise, especially indoors, from all these years dating back to the NASL indoor and MISL days. The Kansas City Comets are essentially back. The Tacoma Stars are a brand. The Baltimore Blast essentially never left. Plus other franchises that have been around for so long, even having right, or Milwaukee Wave from the old AISA days. So in many respects, you have that card to play too. Is this is not a Johnny come lately kind of situation. Indoor soccer has been around for many, many years. It saved the sport. Hello, National Soccer Hall of Fame. Where is your MISL wing? I don't see it yet. But I digress. But my point is that there's actually a history there, right? It's not like it's not like creating something brand new, like a new cricket league per se, or some new sport like World chase tag or whatever. I mean, or pickleball. I mean, there are. This is actually
pillow fighting.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, American Cornhole League. I mean, in this day and age, we're watching people throw beanbags into wooden holes. 30 yards away. It's insane. But to think that indoor soccer can't not only continue but build upon its actual real history. I mean, there's real history there that can be tapped into that is not just a, hey, come look at me, I'm brand new kind of thing. I don't know. It seems to me like you're on the precipice of something generationally next gen here with this sport. And I hope that is the case. And there's no question that people like Shep and JP and our pal Werner Roth that we had last couple of weeks back, these are people with long histories in the game, and yourself, of course. I can't think of a better group of people that understand where this game came from and hopefully have a good vision to lead it to where it can go to the next level in the future.
Yeah, and well said. People don't like change, and it has a great history, but I think it really, really has a bright future. I think there's so many wonderful young players that are playing now. I think there's going to be a great group of young players that come. Hopefully we'll get into Canada. We're already in Mexico. There's talk of people around because of the four guys who you just mentioned. There's now people around the world, coaches who want to come, players who want to come, and money that wants to come. So I think indoor soccer has done a very good job of it in their cities. Now our job is to explode it, not only in North America, but have people around the world know about it.
All right, some definite modesty there from Keith. A reminder that the Milwaukee Wave career of his, which spanned 1992 when they were in the NPSL, all the way through 2014 when they had just finished up, I think, the last ever season of the third incarnation of the MISL. Keith essentially was coach and more for 10 championship game seasons, 6 of which ended up in outright championships for games they lost that championship game or series, but 6 titles. What do they call it? They call it the Title Wave. That was sort of the logic and the slogan of the Milwaukee Wave for all those years that Keith was coach there, and well revered and remembered in the Milwaukee area ever since leaving in 2014, and now in some respects coming back as the relatively newly minted commissioner of the major arena soccer league in which the Milwaukee Wave and a bunch of other teams currently reside and are domiciled. That gray, cool carpet and the ball bouncing around up there in Milwaukee. Our thanks to Keith. You can follow Keith in all of his travails at K Tozer USA Futsal on Twitter. So that's the letter K, Tozer, Tozer, USA, Futsal, Futsal. That's all one little word there on Twitter. You can also follow his MASL Arena Soccer exploits at MASL Arena, all one word, MASL Arena. Our thanks again to our pal JP Delacamera for connecting us to Keith. JP, of course, being the chief media guy and video and PR and corp comms and content distribution guru at the MASL. And check out MASL Soccer where you can at the website. That's maslsoccer.com. And let's see what else. We have lots of great stuff for you to explore from our previous doings and ongoing doings at goodseatsstillavailable.com. Check out our websites where all of our episodes reside. And you can check out all of our fun stuff, all of our links, all of our books and things that you can purchase and or continue to learn more about. And we'll put all of our episodes forthcoming up there as well. But the best way to get every single stinking episode of this silly little show is to subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on every platform known to woman or man. So it's just, it shouldn't be too hard to get us in your respective feeds. But somehow if you forget us or you want to introduce your pals, friends, loved ones to the show, or just get them to sample it, the website, probably the best, easiest way to do so, to hopefully convince them to subscribe and maybe even rate and review us. Again, check us out at goodseatsstillavailable.com, where, of course, you can also subscribe to our weekly email newsletter. You will also find convenient links to our social media feeds. On Facebook, there's a page devoted to us. You'll find us on Instagram at Good Seats Still Available, and you will also find us at Twitter, or on Twitter, at Good Seats Still. That's the handle there. Send us some email if you'd like. We are at hello@goodseatsstillavailable.com. Always happy to get your inquiries and your suggestions and your likings and dislikings. And thank you, of course, to our pal Jerry Payne. Jerry Payne, Audio Excellence. Thank you, sir, for your work this week, as always. All right, we appreciate your listening. Thanks so much. More fun and frivolity coming your way next week. Until then, thank you and goodbye, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.